Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am a geek for fun.
Hey, what's up? I'm that Matt kid.
And I'm Steve.
And because we came in threes, we decided to think of a topic that would also come in threes. Imagine, if you will, an alternative universe. You've collected the 7 Dragon Balls. You've rubbed the genie's lamp. Your mix will click. Whatever. You can just do anything you want. You can grant anything. This is your what if. What would be your dream project that you wish happened, that was starting to happen, but never fell through? The alternative timelines, the better versions of 2020, without the killer bees, where we're run over by insect overlords, but we got this one thing. What would that be for you? Let us know in the comments, but we're going to go over each of our top 3. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be top 3, but 3 we decided to talk about, things we wish had happened, or things we wish followed through and got made. Going over this just in the premise, I thought was fascinating, and the one who suggested it, Steve, who wasn't here last week, has an episode's worth of content to make up for right now. So, why did you want to talk about this, Steve? And you can also start us off.
So I wanted to talk about this because I always find it really interesting when, like, 10 years down the line, someone does an interview and they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I got offered Batman and I did this pitch and it never happened. And they just, like, casually drop this like it doesn't just destroy a bunch of people's lives at what could possibly have been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just insane to me to be like, yeah, 10 years ago I wrote the script for this movie that would have been the greatest thing of all time. It never happened. Grant Morrison does this shit all the time. And so it just drives me mad. And over the years, I've had like these lists in my mind of like, I wish if I had all power, I just wanted to see this one movie made, this one comic written. And I figured because our reality is terrible, it might be fun to just kind of muse for an hour about other realities that would have been interesting. So going first, I don't know if you guys know about this, but the lead singer from My Chemical Romance, Gerard Way, he's a comic book writer too, and he does the Umbrella Academy, which just got a Netflix show. I've never read Umbrella Academy or watched the show, but I'm sure it's good. Back in like 2009 or 10, like somewhere in that range, he pitched a Batman comic called Kingdom of the Mad. And there's actually a Batman black and white statue inspired by his design. And he had this tripped out vision of Batman where Batman's got a big flowing cape with a kingdom on the back of it that was supposed to be heaven. And he could literally turn into a bat and had psychic powers. And the entire book was like this fevered acid trip where the main character was Robin and he was the only one that was normal. And it looks like some sort of cross between 3 Cheers for Street Revenge meets Tim Burton. And I wish to God we got that series.
Oh my fucking god! I just looked up the art for it. You're like the promotional and the statue. Holy shit! That is some My Chemical Romance shit right there.
Isn't that the coolest?
Oh my god,
shit?
That's awesome.
Oh, that Riddler
He's got like a
design is
little
great.
fucking zipper with a cross, and like it's so cool.
Yeah, I'm just looking
Gerard
at
Way
that now.
has
I'll,
continually proven himself to be just a multi-talented individual. I would have loved to see his take on a very like fucking weird ass Batman, because like you, Steve, I think we both kind of grew up listening to My Chemical Romance and the works of Gerard Way being a pretty big thing in our lives. So like, yeah, that would have been really cool to see.
I'm just looking
He's
up
got a
the
Two-Face design where he looks like a patrol cop, and he's just got like a scarred face. His Penguin has got like a judge's wig on. His Riddler looks like the coolest Riddler I've ever seen because he's like halfway between Hush and the regular Riddler. And he's got the coolest Robin costume I think we've designed since the original Tim Drake costume.
Oh shit! Damn, that's cool.
Yeah, that's
Right?
not bad. The Joker one looks interesting. The Joker one looks like freaking a male version of Death from the Endless.
Right? There was just been so much cool shit in this comic, and I wish it got made. I don't know what the story is. As far as I can tell from interviews, DC said Gerard Way never had time, and Gerard Way said DC never had time. So I don't know who's lying, but someone's lying.
I bet you $10 it's DC.
Probably.
It's one of those things where you'd think because it is a Batman project, it would be more of a no-brainer. Because again, if things like Batman White Knight can get made, then like surely stuff like this should be able to just be money in things' hands. Because like again, Batman products are normally what DC is a little more open to, for letting like just creators go wild with a little bit more, having that creative freedom because they know it will still sell. So yeah, I'm surprised, to be honest, especially given, I mean, maybe because it's been doing so well, but Umbrella Academy has kind of blew up. So that might mean he's just like, well, I don't need to go back to comics anymore. Fuck this industry. I can actually make money off my creator-owned stuff right now. So I could understand never going back to it, but like again, this, if someone having that stature and DC always kind of looking to find new ways they can make new Batman stuff, I would be surprised if this actually did stay dead forever. Because normally with pictures like this, Steve, there's normally just like an idea, and then it's just like, oh, we pitched it. Whenever something's got artwork and it gets to this stage, I think there's always a little bit more of just like, they put it out there because they want to see what fans' response will be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. They released a statue of his Joker and his Batman design, and if anybody loves me, they'll buy me the statue of Batman for my birthday next month because it looks so fucking cool, and it's $80.
Oh my Jesus.
Right? And it's not even that big of a statue. But yeah, like, you would think if it got this far, Gerard Way as big as he is, My Chemical Romance is having a reunion tour that got canceled by COVID like everything else. Umbrella Academy's blowing up. You would think it would be kind of a no-brainer to just kind of capture on the zeitgeist of the nostalgia for angsty emo music from the early 2000s and write this Batman comic. Especially if we could have gotten White Knight. Like, nothing against White Knight. I don't like White Knight. I think it's pretty terrible. But if you could make White Knight, why the hell can you not make Kingdom of the Mad? This looks so fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, White Knight is kind of like... Because, like, I don't hate White Knight, but it's kind of aping off of, like, some animated series vibes. Like, it brings back a lot of, like, characters and ideas from animated series, like Baby Doll and shit like that. So, like, I'm wondering is there a nervousness to approach this as opposed to something like White Knight? Because White Knight, even though it is a very different kind of status quo story, it's still very, like, familiar feeling, whereas, like, this is, like, so radically different. This is like some Elseworld shit that we haven't seen since like Batman like Vampire or something like that. So I wonder if there's just a hesitancy there.
It is possible. I mean, I'm sure like there's something where like you show the sketch work to somebody and they're like, is this concept art from the Tim Burton movie or something? Where like maybe they just don't see where it's coming from and it's probably harder to pitch to people that aren't just instantly Gerard Way fans. But I don't know, it's Batman. I feel like you could make this sell if you can sell something like White Knight and give it sequels.
I mean, you could make a goddamn... Like, surely the place to go with this, if we did Dark Knight's Metal, that Scott Snyder, like, in part of the publicity of it, was like, alright, here's a whole playlist to read while you listen to it, while you read. The move would be make like a song for it as well. Like, get that kind of viral marketing kind of thing. Because surely we're always trying to get people to, well, DC is at least, always trying to get people from other avenues to read and like check out the comics. I think that's a whole marketplace that people know Batman. People like Batman. Freaking we made a Batman song with Prince.
Right.
I think that
well,
would be
now
the move.
the Batman trailer with Robert Pattinson looking like a scene kid from the 2000s. Like, it's a no-brainer to bring this back.
Like, legit, we are in the era of emo Batman again, which is glorious, as we should always stay in.
Yes, he is the most emo superhero, and it should always be that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really good point because I mean, you look at the Battinson trailer, and he pulls his mask off. He's got the eyeliner. He's fucking looking like he did step out of the Black Parade music video.
Right.
People are responding really positively to that, and so I do kind of wonder if that movie does well, which I'm sure it will. It's a Batman movie. So if that movie does well and people are generally very positively responding to Battinson, like I wonder if that would open the door for something like this. Genuinely obsessed with this Riddler design, though.
Isn't it great?
Holy shit,
Low-key,
that's pretty cool.
Coolest fucking Riddler I've ever seen.
I've got to do some art for my Batman thing coming up. And wow, since they never made it.
It's such a cool design. For people that don't know, if you look up the concept art,
here and there.
for people that don't know, if you look up the concept art, he's got like a bowler hat. He's like wearing like fucking like golf attire in green, and his face is bandaged up like Hush, except it's got a question mark on it.
Oh, it's so fucking good, and that Robin design is hype. Yeah,
I know.
Jeez.
It's literally the best Robin costume we've ever gotten since the original Tim Drake. I like bar none.
Mm.
We just got the Matt Reeves trailer. You mentioned it, where we have a masked up Riddler. I would not be surprised if at some point during that film he draws a freaking question mark on his like tape covered face like this. I would legit not be surprised if we get to that point. It looks like that kind of vibe. So yeah, no. I had never heard of this before, but I'm kind of obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been freaking out about it ever since I found it, and I wish it got made.
Oh my god, damn it, Steve.
I know, just ruined everybody's lives. We have to live in this miserable world where this comic was not made.
Well, I'll segue then to one of mine because I think it's on the same kind of topic of Batman-related comic that I wish got made that never happened. And this is one I think Steve also knows about. I think we might have talked about it at some point where we kind of got robbed in 2004 when Brian Michael Bendis was on Daredevil.
Oh shit, I know what you're saying.
He and Ed Brubaker were planning on doing a Daredevil Batman book. And not like a Daredevil meets Batman and then they return to their universes at the end of it. What if Batman and Daredevil lived in the same city and took place over the course of years, and we saw how their relationship changed and grew? Which is just like, humana, give it to me, because that would be so interesting.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
Isn't that the greatest fucking thing of all time?
So who was writing it? Brubaker was gonna write it?
Bendis and Brubaker were gonna.
Oh man, yeah, that sounds cool.
It's like at the height of both of their respective careers, they were gonna co-write it. Tons and tons of stuff they do it. They said lots of artists said they do it for free just to get it done. But Paul Levitz at DC said no. And then Levitz said that Quesada said no. And for people who don't know, back then, and we're still kind of in that area, but it was really kind of rampant in the mid-2000s for some reason because of Joe Quesada having like the schoolboy mentality, is there was such a rift between DC and Marvel after the 90s crossovers and the JLA Avengers, which was like a good thing and how the nice, healthy rivalry, that got torn down and bad blood between the two companies because Joe Quesada specifically really wanted to, you were either a Marvel kid or a DC kid, like you couldn't like both. We were gonna stick it back to DC and say fuck you. So cool projects like this where creators are like, well, fuck companies, we have a really interesting story here about two incredibly damaged men who at the surface seem very similar, but when you break it down, they are complete opposites in nearly every single way. And they also both grow and change over the course of this time. Let's analyze that. Let's go into that. Let's see how they go. No. We don't want to do that just because of simply we can't ever be nice to DC or so forth, which is the worst possible reason for one of these things getting shut down, where it is just a dick saying no, where it's not like a logistical thing. It's not that they couldn't do it. It's just because big egos and big personalities got in the way, which is such a shame because, again, I'm just imagining this in my head. Book 1, you've got year 1 Batman meets Daredevil with like the black outfit with like the black cloth, and they both really still don't know what the fuck they're doing, so they probably think they're both like another kind of villain. Then you do book 2, and then it's Daredevil in the yellow costume, and fucking Batman's maybe got Robin now, and then book 3, Daredevil's gone through fucking Born Again, and then Jason Todd's died for Bruce, and then book 4 you've got like the modern Daredevil with the modern Batman, and how they are they've while Bruce is healed and kind of come out of it, if you look at the Grant Morrison thing, like the Buddhist Virgo ritual came out the complete optimum Batman, Matt's just continuously spiraled and lost his mind. So like I would end that book with Kingpin Matt versus Batman. Like, that would be so good. And like, there's so many different angles you could look at. Like, that's just one pitch, but they're different rows gallery. How does Batman fight Bullseye? How does Elektra meet with Catwoman was also something that was pitched. There's just so many things with these characters specifically that would fit so well with each other's tones.
To be honest, because I like what you're saying there, but to be honest, I feel like you could sort of turn the tables, because Brubaker's Batman is kind of crazy and paranoid.
That's true.
And like really, really over the top. So you could have just been like, Daredevil finds his way and Bruce becomes like Dark Knight Returns psychopath.
That'd have been great too. Which is crazy, because then you get to have modern Daredevil beat up Frank Miller.
Right? So fucking cool.
Which would be the ultimate catharsis. So no, actually, yeah, I feel that one. I normally do default to the fact that Bruce Wayne has more candle in his life than Daredevil does. But no, you're right. In that period in the 2000s, Matt's life was going to shit, but he still wasn't near Bruce's level of fucking crazy.
No, like, Daredevil never got to fucking War Games territory.
No,
and I love that Bendis run. He goes through the ringer, but he never gets to War Games.
Like he's just about to get to War Games, and then like Luke Cage and everyone show up and like they call him out on it, and like, hold on, you're going a bit too far. Never had that in the Batman books. Never had the Justice League tie up and say, Bruce, what the fuck you doing? So no, yeah, you're right. I didn't even look at that angle, but man, that's another one where Bendis is at DC now. So maybe if he gets on Batman, we get the current Daredevil, right, Chip Zdarsky, and we just flip it. I don't know if it would have the same impact as it was back in, because you've said this before, Steve, but like that was such a golden era for Marvel. That period.
Oh, yeah.
That was just like the peak of Marvel. So like if that had came out then, it would have changed things. I think we've had that in the wake of that. We would have got like a Superman, Spider-Man one, a Wonder Woman. I don't know at that time. I guess it would be like Storm would be their biggest female character. But like as we keep going forward, more stuff like that would be open, because this would have done gangbusters simply because the talent on it, the art on it. Like you've seen. I think Alex Maleev has done mock-up covers for a Batman Daredevil crossover where one cover is Daredevil in the skyline with Batman flowing and it's all red, and the other one's like a dark blue, and then Daredevil flying through Gotham, and it just looks so perfect. Like these two characters would fit so well into each other's worlds in a way where you legit don't need to make any other justifications other than just New York City is now Gotham. Like Hell's Kitchen is just now a part of Gotham, and it fits perfectly. And it hurts my soul that we never got anything like that. Are there? I guess only say this if there's none of these on your list. But are there stuff like that where you just imagine you'd really love to take like two characters from Marvel or DC and just do a book with them outside of continuity?
To be honest, I always thought Daredevil and Nightwing would have really hit it off.
Yeah.
But if I can't use Nightwing, I would go with Winter Soldier and Nightwing.
That'd be great.
Or if I can't use Daredevil, because Nightwing and Winter Soldier are like two really similar personality types, where they've got a mentor figure, they've got someone that like they're very definitely different from. But whereas Nightwing is sort of a better version of Bruce, Bucky's a worse version of Captain America. So if you had those two go head to head with each other, and it's like very easily you could see Nightwing becoming someone like Winter Soldier, and Winter Soldier has someone else to look up to in Nightwing. You could have like this really fun buddy cop detective noir thing going with those two, and they would just be like the coolest pair because one of them would just be perpetually moody and down, and the other one is just like hitting on girls and quipping and jumping around and free dancing and shit. Like, it'd be such opposite energy, and I would love the hell out of that.
Yeah, I don't have like a wish list for any of them. I'm terrified because I know if Marvel and DC's relations ever improve enough to do a crossover, we're probably gonna get some like garbage Deadpool Harley Quinn crossover that I would hate. I don't know. I'd maybe pair like the Question with one of Marvel's martial artists, but I don't have like a short list of a crossover I'd want to do. It's funny though because like I just don't ever see Marvel and DC doing a crossover ever again. I think the success of the MCU, the size of comic book properties nowadays, like I just think it was never like, I don't want to take these two multi-billion-dollar companies and be like, oh, they used to be such friendly rivals and now they're bitter companies who hate each other. But like, kind of, like legit. So unfortunately, I just don't see crossovers ever happening with them anymore.
I think a while ago, I don't know if you saw, but there was a movement between a bunch of Marvel and DC writers on Twitter where they tried.
Yeah, I think Gail Simone was part of that.
Yeah, they tried to get Secret Crisis trending, and they're all down to do it. But I think you're right; it is just a higher ups thing, where they don't want to play ball, which is a shame. But maybe I don't think never, simply because as more and more we kind of do the Jeff Johns effect, where the people who love comics and like are fanboys of the material, for better and for worse, start running the show. I think that's when you'll see that coming back. Simply because again, it's clear that a lot of these creators want to do that and want to play with these toys. The fact that there's an entire arc in Hickman's Avengers run where they just fight the Justice League but under different names, I think shows that like even in Marvel's biggest premiere books, they still run a play with the DC toys. And then DC recently with Doomsday Clock had like a big thing about, oh yeah, and then in one kind of Superman met the Hulk in 4 and then the Hulk died to save his life and some shit like that. Like, just they keep playing up to where it's clear that they want to do it, and it's just about until when that dam will break. I won't say never, but I think it's definitely still a long way off.
I also kind of just miss when comics were breaking the fourth wall enough to have like crossovers without advertising them, and it would just be like a fun inside joke. Like when Walt Simonson was writing Thor and he didn't turn into John Blake anymore, Thor still had to have a secret identity. So he would just like put on a suit and glasses. And there's like literally a scene where he's trying to change in a phone booth and he just passes Clark Kent trying to do the same exact fucking thing. And it's hilarious. And in Kurt Busiek's Avengers run, it's a very similar thing where like at the end of the big crossover that starts that book, they get all the Avengers together in one big group shot and they're like, we're way bigger than the Justice League.
That's funny.
All right, Matt, what you got for us?
I'm gonna pivot us away from comics a little bit here. We're gonna enter the world of video games because that seems to be my fucking niche in this little group. There's a lot of like canceled, amazing looking video games. You've got like your usual suspects like fucking StarCraft Ghost and like the Flash game and shit like that all looked really cool. I'm going to talk about the one that is kind of the king of the castle when it comes to canceled games of late. The one that hurts me the most, the one that I was like, because a lot of these are ones that like I didn't even know about until like years later when it's someone telling me, oh, did you hear about this game that almost happened but didn't? And I'm like, no, but thanks for making me sad. This was one that I was like actually fucking so upset about, and that's Silent Hills. Holy shit, Silent Hills. So for those who don't know, Silent Hill is a survival horror / psychological horror video game series The original trilogy of which Silent Hill 1 through 3 is considered just like fucking mastercraft of horror video games, and they absolutely are. But they are it's a franchise that's owned by Konami, and if you know anything about Konami, you know that Konami is like the worst company in the fucking world, who has just run all of their franchises into the ground. So a few years ago, like in 2015 or so, this game pops up on the PlayStation Network called PT. It's like this like free demo. No one knows what the fuck it is. And they're like, what is PT? So they download it, and it's by some studio called like 7788 Studio, or like 7780s Studio or some shit like that. And it's this little horror game. It's like this little horror demo where you're in a house, you walk down this hallway, you go from one door to another door, and every time you go through the door, you walk back out and you're in the same hallway, and just keeps going over and over. And every time you cycle through, shit changes, sometimes subtly, sometimes it's dramatic. It's fucking terrifying. It is a very short game. It can be beaten in under a half hour, and it's a masterpiece. It is one of the best horror games put out in recent years. And there was this extremely convoluted fucking puzzle that people collectively eventually figured out. And when you complete the puzzle in the game, a cutscene plays, and there's a character who is played by Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead. He was going to be the main character. So there's a character who's clearly, the likeness of Norman Reedus, walking like down a street. And he walks down the street, the camera pans up, the word Silent Hill appears, and then a little S at the end of it for Silent Hills. So, as it turns out, this PT game that no one knew anything about was a playable teaser, was what PT comes for a new Silent Hill game that was going to be directed by Hideo fucking Kojima, who is best known for creating, of course, Metal Gear Solid, who was writing and co-producing it with Guillermo del Toro, and Junji Ito was going to be involved in some way. So this was literally going to be the best horror video game ever made. But then Konami and Kojima had this massive falling out because Konami is the fucking worst company in the world. They barred Kojima from going to accept a game award when they were doing the VGAs. They scrubbed his name off of a couple releases that he was involved in, and they not only canceled his Silent Hills project, they removed PT from the PlayStation stores, made it impossible to re-download it, even if you'd already downloaded it. And to this day, it's impossible to play PT again because emulation for PS4 is a long way away. And some people have tried to recreate PT, like shot for shot, recreate it using like Unreal Engine. And even though Konami is doing nothing with it, they've still DMCA'd those people because Konami is a bunch of fucking assholes. And so this would have been probably the best horror game in years, but Konami, just due to bad blood between them and Kojima, canceled it. And to this day, it's a fresh wound. A lot of people were really sad to see it happen, but Kojima eventually went off and founded his own game studios and put out Death Stranding, which Guillermo del Toro helped with. So it has a somewhat happy ending, but it's a very sad story for horror video game fans. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of any of this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, based on that story, I was going to ask you what you thought of Death Stranding, because I think that was probably the only good thing to come from the cancellation of Silent Hills.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. I feel kind of, to be 100% honest with you, I like my Kojima backlog. Like I've played some of the Metal Gear Solid stuff, but I haven't played Death Stranding yet. Like I'm not like, I respect the man immensely. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm like the biggest Kojima fan in the world, but the dude is definitely very talented, and I would have killed to see what he did with Silent Hill. Because have you guys played any of the Silent Hill games or anything like that?
Yes.
No,
Okay.
but I've seen a couple of Let's Plays of them.
Yeah. And like now you can go to eBay and like buy PlayStation 4s that still have PT loaded onto them for like way more than it would cost to buy just a brand new PS4. Like
Yeah.
no shit, like it's crazy.
Yeah, I played the original like 2 or 3 Silent Hills. I never played the first one. I'm almost positive I never played the first one, but I know I played 2 and I played 3, and I may have played one other one, but I don't know which one it is because it was at my friend's house. But I really, really liked Silent Hills as a concept just because I love Del Toro, and the idea of doing a horror video games or horror survival game with Del Toro seemed instantly like a no-brainer. Especially because I think that was the point in time when survival horror games were getting like a bit more of a renaissance. Like we were getting a lot more zombie shooters. We were getting Dead Space. Like there was just this little niche pocket of next-gen consoles with survival horror elements to it. And it seemed like such a boss idea to have Del Toro make one of those. And like everything Del Toro touches, it became a passion project that died.
Oh my god, I almost put his Hobbit movie on here.
Oh my god!
Fucking, yes. I'm so pissed about that because I don't even really care about Lord of the Rings all that much, but I was like, that Hobbit trilogy sucks ass, and I would have really liked his 2-part Hobbit movie.
Entire year in pre-production for that fucking movie.
I almost made that one of my 3, but I'm like, I care about Silent Hill more than I care about Middle Earth. But like, fuck, man, like poor Guillermo del Toro. But like, yeah, I mean, this was one of those things where like the AAA industry collectively decided one day that survival horror was dead. It wasn't. They just decided it was and stopped putting money into AAA survival horror games. And then fucking Slender comes out, and then fucking Amnesia: The Dark Descent comes out, and then they're just like, oh wait, no, maybe these are popular. And then like, so there was just this like snowball of like, and like it's very much that meme of like some random fucking indie game, like the fucking giant stacking dominoes, where it's like some random indie game about Slender Man comes out, and then like the fucking end domino is that Resident Evil gets completely like fucking redone with Resident Evil 7. So like Resident Evil, very much inspired by PT and very much inspired by this like wave of indie survival horror games, it put this like awesome end cap on that, where it was just like, all right, horror games are back, and here's Resident Evil 7. And if Silent Hills had come out too, like we would have had a fucking brand new Resident Evil game that was fucking baller. We would have had a brand new Silent Hill game that was fucking baller. It sucks because I've always been more of a Silent Hill guy than a Resident Evil guy, and so it's just, it makes me sad. It makes me always like, even like the Netflix like Castlevania show, as much as I think it's very good, I'm just like, go fucking pirate that shit. Don't give Konami your fucking money. Fuck them.
Konami has screwed over Kojima so much. It's sort of a wonder that certain things even got made. I remember when Phantom Pain came out, and when it did, everyone was putting Kojima's Metal Gear Solid on top of the cover because they fucking took his name off.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was such bullshit. Like, I can't believe that game. That's one of those things where, like, it's a really good game. I love Metal Gear Solid. It got a lot of, like, critical acclaim when it came out, but it's so bittersweet to see all those people accept those fucking awards for Phantom Pain when Kojima couldn't, because it's his fucking game.
Yeah.
Especially because it's so rare in the gaming industry specifically to have a figure like Kojima.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like auteurs in the gaming industry, and most of them are Japanese. Like most of them are like Kojima and Hideki Kamiya and Shigeru Miyamoto. Like most of your like I can't think of anyone in the West where they advertise a game because of who the creative director is. That just doesn't happen with like Western games.
What was the I can't remember his name, but that has happened one time with the guy who makes all the Beyond Two Souls and like...
Oh, David Cage.
Yeah.
Fucking David Cage.
That's the only Western version of that, for better and for make of that what you will. But like the fact
to be fair, they've been trying to hype up Sefton Hill, but I just don't think that's working.
No,
they try with him. They've tried with like Jonathan Blow, and like They could do it with like Ken Levine, but like no one fucking knows who Ken Levine is. And I'm just like, but he's made some of the best Western games of like critically that people have liked. So it's like, I don't know why we don't try to do that, but like you can rattle off all the you can like Yoko Taro and Hidetaka Miyazaki and the Devil May Cry guy, Hideaki Itsuno. Like there are so many of them, but then like over here we just don't fucking bother.
And I think it's definitely because what makes Kojima even stand out amongst his peers in that way is his games are so personal, and they come from his pain and his damage and what movies he likes and everything, to the extent of where it's not just one creative director leading a thing. It is very much closer to what you feel like with auto filmmakers, where to the fact that Metal Gear is basically more film than game when you get to the later entries in the series, where it is just such this personal, this one guy's story that he's working with all these talented people to bring that to life. And Silent Hills felt like it was going to be that with PT and everything. Death Stranding is like that as well, but like Silent Hills, I think putting a horror spin on that. In the same way that Metal Gear Solid changed how people do military games and action stealth games forever, I think that would the exact same thing would have happened with survival horror with PT. Just because if you look at that demo and never play it, it's a good thing they got rid of it because it is spooky and it's not a good time. Like it's a great achievement, but it's not a good time. The fact that people are still finding out little details about that game to this day, I think a couple of months ago, massive reveal happened, which people freaked out. The entire time, the fucking ghost lady is right behind you, and you can see her shadow, and people like had to hack the game so like you could take the camera, and there's this shot of where the player is in the bathroom. And people took the camera out so they could look in the hallway, and it's the scariest moment in the game that you'll never see, where she's just walking past the door. She looks at the door that you're in, and then she looks away and keeps walking past. Who the fuck programs that? Like, that legit made me feel like, oh, okay, this is just haunted. No one could actually make that. Because you're not gonna see that shit. What was the point? That took hours to... It's haunted. It is actually haunted, and Konami just saved us all. That's the only fucking explanation. Because if they actually were smart enough to think about that, and they could keep that level of quality throughout an entire game, like, I can't even imagine what that would even look like.
Oh, yeah. No, it would have been... I mean, it would have been horrifying. It would have been... People
would have fucking died of shock. Like, you can't do that to people for 8 hours.
Play it in VR. Play it in VR. You'll be good.
No, thank you.
No, it's, it's just a fucking shame. It would have been, it might have been just too fucking scary. They just looked at it and just like, no, we don't want to get sued. This is gonna cause heart attacks. So yeah, it hurts. It still hurts, but you know, Kojima's in a better place. Del Toro and Norman Reedus got to work with him on Death Stranding, so everyone came out of it okay.
I would be
Konami is slowly fading into fucking obscurity, as they deserve to be.
If he never actually made a horror game, because he got his own studio, he has the power to do that now.
Yeah.
Death Stranding was a hit. It did make some buck. So I think I would be surprised if... And Death Stranding has horror elements. There are elements of PT in that game. It's just not the focus. So I would be surprised as a creative if you put that much care and that much detail into a project like that. You're going to want to take a step back for a couple of years just because the wound of that's going to be fresh. But the same way he came back to Metal Gear after he kept saying, well, this is the last one, just because he had more stuff to tell with it. I think I would be surprised if an original IP doesn't come out, which takes the spirit of PT and makes it live on.
I hope so. I'm very excited to see what he does next. I haven't gotten the chance to dive into Death Stranding. I would like to, but Kojima is certainly now that he's free of the reins of Konami, I'm nothing but excited to see what else he's got going on.
Okay then, what about yourself, Mr. Baxi?
So my next one is an unproduced TV show. So, as most people know, my favorite TV show of all time is Angel, and I'm a really big fan of Joss Whedon. I mean, he's a terrible, terrible person, and there's a lot of caveats we need to make about Joss Whedon in general, but I love Buffy, and I love Angel, and I rewatch those shows, like, constantly. Back in 2001 and 2002, he was kind of, like, in probably his prime. Basically what you had Angel go off and do his own spin-off series at the end of Buffy season 3. And so season 4 of Buffy and season 1 of Angel are happening at the same time. And then after that, you had Buffy, you had Angel, and you had pre-production on Firefly. And by the time you got to Angel season 4, Joss Whedon was writing Firefly, Angel, and Buffy all at the same time. But before any of that, back in 2001, when Buffy went off to college in the 4th season of that show, there was talk of doing a new spin-off show that wasn't Angel, but was going to be concurrent with all the other stuff, called Ripper. And so, if you're familiar with Buffy at all, one of the characters in Buffy the Vampire Slayer is Rupert Giles, who is her Watcher. And he's like this really sort of like dull, down-to-earth, English research type. He's very nerdy, he's very quiet, all he does is read books, he's very pristine and kind of just, just like the most typical boring English professor you could possibly have. And then there's an episode where someone named Ethan Rayne shows up and creates this situation where people become their Halloween costumes and the world descends into chaos. And while that's happening, Giles goes off and figures out who it is. And for like 5 minutes, nothing more than 5 minutes, he completely changes demeanor. He becomes fucking John Constantine and starts beating the shit out of Ethan Rayne until he undoes the spell. And you realize that Giles was actually a badass in his high school days who used to be called Ripper, who quit school, was like in a punk band, chain smoked, and was literally fucking John Constantine doing like occult magic. And it was the coolest shit ever, and we never got more of it. So Joss Whedon proposed this show called Ripper, which was going to be on the BBC. It was going to be a movie at one point. It was going to be a miniseries at another point. And it was just going to be Buffy's off doing college, Angel's off in Los Angeles doing his own thing. And now Giles, who's had this adoptive family for all these years and got fired as a Watcher, has nothing to do. And so he just goes off, and it's like these adventures of like this lonely guy who used to be a badass trying to solve like occult mysteries on his own in England. It would have been a fucking Constantine TV show is what I'm saying. And we never got it. For years, there have just been like, it's the same thing Whedon does with everything he's ever made, where it's like, I'm working on it, and then 2 years later, I got this part done, and then 3 years later, it's happening this way, and then 4 years later, and it's nothing. It still hasn't happened. He said it was going to air as a 2-hour pilot on BBC in 2001, and then in 2007, he said it was going to be a TV movie, and then the last we heard of it, Giles got killed off in the Buffy comics.
Wow.
I would have loved it. I was so down for that show. At one point, I think there was talk of making it like a Spike and Giles show together. I don't know how true that is, but all the other old Buffy writers are going to be attached to it, and it would have been the coolest fucking thing ever, and I wish it happened.
I wonder, with everything kind of coming out about Joss Whedon, do you think any of that like material associated with Buffy, do you think that's ever gonna come back in vogue? Like, are the Buffy comics still going on? Like, are people still?
Yeah. So when Angel ended and the Buffy comics started, they were all in canon, and so you had Buffy season 8 and you had Angel season 6, and they just kept going from there. The last like 2 years or so, they did a reboot and basically ignored all the pre-established canon and started doing their own thing. But there's been talk at Fox for the last year now of doing a reboot of Buffy without Joss Whedon. And Buffy's never really sort of died in popularity. Like, the Buffy comics are the bread and butter of Dark Horse for a lot of people. Because they've been publishing them for so long at this point. So I'm sure Buffy will come back in vogue a little bit. That show's always been a classic. You don't have modern TV without Joss Whedon. I feel like people really forget how quickly the TV landscape changed with Joss Whedon and Buffy in 1997. Because before Buffy, TV was a completely different animal. And everything you watch now that's quote-unquote nerd culture-y geeky stuff like Arrow, Flash, Stranger Things, the myriad of Netflix shows we get that are superhero related, like, you owe all of that to Joss Whedon, as terrible as he is. And like that entire landscape of TV making is so ingrained with what Buffy did, but it's starting to become stale again. And talking about rebooting Buffy and doing it in another way that might be like innovative TV again would be really, really cool. Again, as problematic as Buffy is, I feel like it did a lot right, and all of its copycats that have happened in the later years have sort of missed the heart of what made Buffy interesting in the first place. I was talking about this with someone else before, but Buffy did something that we still can't get right in the Star Wars prequels, which is Rey is a character whose possession of power is under question for the entirety of the sequel trilogy. Buffy is a character from moment one of that TV show where she never has to deal with that. There is not a single moment in the entire canon of that show where the idea that Buffy is powerful is the problem. Ever. Like, she just gets to have stories where she's a badass and she deals with trauma and shit and people are stronger than her, but no one ever quite looks at her and is like, she's just a girl. Like, that literally never happens in 7 seasons. And we still can't do that. And we still can't replicate that. And that sort of, like, lightning in a bottle that show was having more of it and rebooting it and doing it in different ways, like this Ripper TV show or an eventual reboot, would just be such a godsend in this landscape of TV that's all become like really stale, just like it was before Buffy first came out.
And this is an interesting question I'll ask you then, Steve, in relation to that, because so much of Buffy is Whedon, and so much of that has influenced and changed, which led to the state we are now, which you said. What then would a new Buffy thing look like in this landscape? Would you get Joss Whedon back, or would you get someone else?
You definitely don't want to get Joss Whedon back. Joss Whedon's one of those guys that sort of peaked in the 90s and has never outgrown the 90s sensibilities. You can't get Joss Whedon to innovate TV again because his whole thing was, the old order sucks. My parents used to write for shit like Roseanne. I'm not going to do that. And now Joss Whedon's the guy. Everyone's going to be like, my dad writes like Joss Whedon. I don't want to write that anymore. So you can't do Joss Whedon. You have to get somebody new. I don't know who they're courting. But like really what needs to happen is you need a Buffy show that comes back and does what that show did at its core premise, which is high school feels like life and death. So let's make it a metaphor for literal life and death. And the biggest problem Buffy had on that level is just that it doesn't really feel like high school anymore. You can't go back and watch Buffy and feel nostalgic for it unless you've seen it already, because it's not how the world works anymore. There's a really good opportunity here with how much like young adult fiction we have coming out on binge-worthy TV, where you could do a new high school show that really feels like high school again, and just that setting alone would force you to innovate things that show couldn't do at the time. Like, the biggest thing about Buffy from the first episode is the very first scene of the first episode is a teenager and a girl walking into the old high school while it's abandoned, and the girl's kind of scared because she thinks she's hearing noises, and the dude's being all macho and like, don't worry, it's completely safe, and you think he's going to turn into a monster and kill her, but instead she turns out to be a vampire and kills him. And like that was hilarious in the 90s because you never saw shit like that before. And so much of that show was taking those old tropes and inverting them as much as possible. Now that we've gotten to the point where all of those inversions are boring, you could totally do a show that just plays all of this straight. Because Whedon was totally against the lovesick vampire stuff that show became. And now if you do a version of that where it's not the lovesick vampires, but just has that more modern context, you really might have a chance to do something special again.
No, I'd be interested in seeing that, and I definitely think there is an audience for it. Because then, in the same way that Avatar's Last Airbender now kind of took on a new life as a whole new generation of people have just discovered it by putting it on Netflix, in the lead up to if you make a new movie or you make a full-on new series for Netflix, if they just put out the old series and just made like a big push for it, you'd have a whole bunch of people discover that and then go into the new thing where you'd have even more of a, okay, we can do the comics as well, we can we can maybe do a proper movie, we can do this, this, and this, where franchises really just need one big hit to come back to life. Whereas before, it would often seem like, oh, well, it had its time, and it's never going to come back again. In this era where with how communication has changed, and now the internet decides what's popular, rather than people only have access to what corporations and media show them, that's what gets popular. I think something like Buffy can have a resurgence quite easily, specifically if you do the kind of thing which you're pitching, Steve, which is take it to how it is now with a high school setting. But I would almost want to do, like, not even the kind of thing you see in, like, Spider-Man Homecoming, where it's a PG high school setting. With something like Buffy, with something like vampires, and again, the life and death situations you're dealing with, you can really just full on dive into how fucked up actual high school could be sometimes.
Well, yeah, because that's exactly it. Because, like, Buffy did stuff with drug addiction. It did stuff with homosexual relationships. It did stuff with, like, guilt and murder. And, like, it was a prepackaged setting of existential philosophy in a teenage setting that explored so many radical ideas at the time that you could sort of ape up in a new dressing now. Like, 13 Reasons Why is a terrible show, but if you did all of that material and just wrapped it in the Whedon style of it's all a metaphor in the form of the supernatural, you could get so much mileage out of it. Like, horror movies are bigger than ever. Like, just do a straight up horror TV show again where the vampires are the bad guys like they are there, but the vampires lacking a soul and the relationships you can have with them, and magic as a metaphor for sex, and like all of these just like baked in ideas that were always there and ripe for the picking that you can just do now with all of this strange new technology we have. Like, how does a vampire function in 2020? Do they have a cell phone? Do they look like it's perpetually the 90s because they're so old? Are vampires people that look like teenagers but act like they're grandparents and boomers? Like, there's so much gold there.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because you have things like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina showing that there's definitely still an audience for that.
Yeah, despite Netflix canceling it.
I'm still pissed about it.
Yeah, I really like that show, and I really like those comics.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And we were gonna get the fucking Witches War. There was actually going to be some crossover shit in the next season, so big mad about that. But I feel like that's the kind of show that is kind of directly aping that sort of Buffy-ness, and I feel like that's a prime example of a show that wouldn't exist without Buffy happening, just because of the tone of it and things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely an audience for it. I don't know. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it just, I think right now Joss Whedon's got such heat on him that any property related to him and anything he'd make money in association with, I think is like a touchy subject for people. But it's also something that I think will eventually, because it gets brought up all the time still. Like, people still cite Buffy as like a thing they're referencing, or a thing they're indebted to, even if it's not. People, when do the CW shows, don't say it out loud, but you do see people who make vampire fiction particularly normally will always cite Buffy as an inspiration. I think the recent BBC Dracula series, Stephen Moffat came out a little bit and said he really enjoyed how vampires were in Buffy. So it's still influencing things. It just takes that right creative, who, preferably a female creative, I think would be nice to actually have in charge of Buffy for once, just to see their take on it and to get that new lifeblood. But for my second one, I'm gonna go back into the realms of video games. When you were doing your lead up, Matt, I legitimately thought you were gonna say this, and I'm glad you didn't, because then it lets me have my second pick. But this is one that kind of gets always talked about every year or so, and people want it to happen, or rumors it might happening.
I know what it is. I bet
it might happen, but at this current time, it's looking like all the ideas for it have been kind of butchered and repurposed someplace else. So I would be surprised if it does. But that is Knights of the Old Republic 3.
Oh shit! Surprised me.
Oh yeah.
I thought you were gonna go for like the Daredevil game or something.
No. That's just me being like a stan and like, I want the Daredevil game, I want the Superman game. For this, I'm talking about something that we were actually, as a collective human race, robbed of.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Knights of the Old Republic 3. I love the original Knights of the Old Republic. Matt, I know you love Knights of the Old Republic 2. Steve, I have no idea about either of your thoughts on those two games.
I love Knights of the Old Republic. I played that shit so much growing up.
Okay, then good. Because then
we finally get to talk about Kotor on Geeky Gentlemen. I'm so hype.
Exactly. Because this is one of the things where Knights of the Republic 1, I thought, did the perfect Star Wars experience that was in the lieu of the original trilogy, but was still definitely its own thing. It just carried on the similar kind of just message of it, the pathos of it, if you will, without having to repeat it and do the same thing. Knights of the Republic 2, I have more mixed feelings on. I think it raises a lot of good points as like a deconstruction of Star Wars. It's like, all right, we did the most definitive Star Wars thing. Here's how we can break that down and talk about the flaws of Star Wars. I think maybe it leans a little bit too into that sometimes and stops telling the story, but that's my... Other people will disagree with me on that, and I'm that's an entirely subjective viewpoint. I still think that's a fantastic game, which you can play to, especially if you get the restored content stuff. But the premise for free is like my shit to the fucking T. You, as the exile, and I don't know if you would have been continuing your character progression from 2, or you would have just made an entirely new character that would have that backstory, would be on the hunt for Revan, and you're going to go into the outer regions, you'll find Revan, and then Revan becomes your teacher, and you two have to fight the ancient Sith. And we're not talking about Darth Vader, but in slightly more old armor that we got in SWTOR with the online game. They're describing it like, alright, but Sith as mixed with Lovecraft. Like, what if these guys, these ancient dark side forces, were just reshaping nebulas, like recreating galaxies? They didn't just rule empires, they were like gods. And what would a society in Star Wars look like that with such a heavy religious cultist thing? What would the galaxy be shaped into? And how do you fight that? How do you stop that? How do you deal with faith? How do you deal with hero worship? In the form of your mentor literally being Revan, the most hyped up fucking every Star Wars fan who hates Rey apparently loves Revan for all the same bullshit, but in a way that's all about deconstructing heroes and diving into that and like the myth of the first Kotor, and it felt like the perfect fusion of both, where you're dealing with big ideas, big themes that we're never going to see on the screen, but we're not forgetting that this is meant to be a crazy fun adventure, that you're using a gameplay to go on and do this. And just as a fan, one of my favorite things about Knights of the Old Republic 2 is Revan, not because he's not in that game, but all the shit you find out about him that paints him as a completely different character than what he's been portrayed of in fandom and in synths, where they've hailed him as this great he's the perfect balance of the light and the dark, he's this mythic chosen one figure. No. Revan fucked up, but he was like a tactician first and foremost, who decided that the dark side as a tool was more tactically viable to prepare against the shit that they were going to come up against. And that's so interesting, because what the fuck were they going to come up against?
Oh man, yeah, fucking love Kotor. Kotor is like fucking, that was like Kotor and Kotor 2 were like some of the first RPGs I ever really got into as a kid. It fucking pains me that we didn't get a Kotor 3, and we got because we get that line of lip service from the producers of just like, oh well, I mean, SW Tor is basically Kotor 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's just like, no, fuck off, it's not. It's a darn shame. The only thing that sucks is that if you did a Kotor 3, Chris Avalon would have to be heavily involved, and that's unfortunate. So if they revived it, maybe just don't involve Chris Avalon, and that'd be great. Because that shit all sounds phenomenal. I mean, it's it's insane because you're absolutely right. Like, there is a chunk of the fandom that, for whatever reason, there's a lot of overlap between people who like Revan and the KOTOR stuff and just hate the sequel trilogy. Having said that, though, a lot of people who love all of Star Wars, myself included, have just this insane love for KOTOR and KOTOR 2 and the universe of those games. It's baffling to me that EA won't even look at even doing a remake of KOTOR. It's a money printing machine. You own BioWare. Like, I don't understand. Now, it's unfortunate because at this point, if KOTOR 3 were to happen, EA would give it to BioWare. It'd be some and it just would not be what it would have been if Obsidian had gotten to make it in the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating because I could almost see KOTOR 3 or just a new KOTOR game happening at some point in the future, but I don't think it's going to be what it would have been if Obsidian had gotten to make the final part of that trilogy.
Mm-hmm. And part of me, like, again, if we're talking dream scenarios, like, most, if not all, well, I'll just say most of Star Wars Legends was just hot garbage. And they went in crazy directions that just did not make sense with anything. And we're in a much better place now. Now that we've kind of scrapped a lot of that and repurposed some of that. Feel free to disagree if you want, but that's just my view. The thing with KOTOR 3, though, that I would have loved is the idea of going as far as we're ever going to go with the Force would have been such a nice send-off to all of that. It would have been like, okay, we know Grandmaster New Jedi Order Luke Skywalker is fucking bullshit. but let's give that to some fucking villains that you have to beat in some boss fights. And now suddenly that's the coolest thing ever made. And even then, you don't even have to fight them. Because part of the joy of KOTOR was that it was so about not just big laser fights that a lot of the old Star Wars Legends material kind of got wrapped up in like the hype of the Jedi and the feats, if you will. KOTOR was special because you gave the chance of, you didn't have to kill. You could talk to people. You could fight a Sith spirit, or you could redeem it and let it find peace, which is such the perfect option to give. I want to fucking fight Cthulhu Sith, Darth Cthulhu, right? But I also want to give him a hug. I want to have that option. I want to have the option to, because that's what made KOTOR special, is you could have them join your party, and the way they described it was exactly that. Is it's like, you're not just dealing with necessarily pure evil forces. These are just forces that live outside the known galaxy. So it's a different culture, it's a different society. So are you actually right coming in there with the idea like, wow, my way is the right way, right? I'm the Jedi, or I'm the Sith, this is how it's done. That's not necessarily a good thing. You're making things worse. Why are you so superior to have that kind of idea, right? And I think it's such a layered, interesting story mixed with sci-fi and Star Wars and religion and belief and faith. All of that tied up in such a nice, aesthetic, cool package. That just makes me sad thinking about it. And that is one, like, we've kind of been on a positive trend where we're like, oh, well, this could happen. You're 100% right, Matt. The KOTOR 3 that could have been is not going to happen anymore. It's always nebulous. The ideas may get reused, which is my big hope. I hope Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy, if that ever comes true, I think he'd fucking kill it with, like, just taking some ideas from this kind of, like, dealing with the Force and the nature of it and the kind of bigger questions to ask with it. I think he'd nail that one. But an actual dedicated KOTOR 3 game with Revan, with the Exile, all of that, I think is long gone.
Yep. It's unfortunate. Obsidian is... Chris Avalon and the stuff against him notwithstanding, Obsidian is an immensely talented group of video game developers. They created the best Fallout game, the best one, and like a lot of people would love to see them revisit these big franchises that they left their mark on, but like just because of how big those franchises are, they're not going to get the chance to do that again, which is fine. They can go off and do their own things, but it is a shame that if Kotor ever gets revisited, yeah, it's definitely not going to be that. But yeah, man, I'm gonna have to go replay the Kotor games now.
Well, you have fun with that. I'm glad I hurt your soul. What's your last one then, Matt?
I did want to do a Batman thing. I was gonna do the Gotham by Gaslight video game that almost happened.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Because the footage for that looks really fucking cool. But like we ended up getting, obviously some really great Batman games, so I'm not that worried about it anymore. So I want to talk about, this is kind of an obvious one, but I want to talk about fucking Batman Unchained / Batman Triumphant, because holy shit. Like, the fuck? Like, you're just like, oh yeah, no, the script had Scarecrow as the main villain, and Joker would get brought back, hallucinations. Also, Harley was there as Joker's daughter, and Harley and Scarecrow were going to team up to fight Batman, and also Schumacher was going to be involved, and I'm just like, I would pay all the money, and like Coolio was going to be Scarecrow?
Well, there's also word that they were going to recast George Clooney with Kurt Russell.
Shit, really?
Yes.
Oh my god.
And Nicolas Cage was going to be Scarecrow.
Well, I thought Nicolas Cage was going to be Scarecrow, and then I thought that they decided Coolio was going to be Scarecrow, was what I had heard.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. It's been a long time, but that probably makes more sense.
It's Scarecrow, so maybe they could both be Scarecrow. And
that's true.
Different. They fucking spray Batman with tear gas, and then he turns into Nicolas Cage, and Batman's like, "Ah, no!"
I do know though, and maybe this is why the movie got killed, because they cast Harley Quinn as Courtney Love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that would have been something.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just a Harley Quinn Scarecrow team up is always something I'm fucking down for. I love Scarecrow. Scarecrow's one of my favorite fucking Batman villains of all time. And this would have been like fucking like 90s Harley, back when we were still kind of very close to animated series, because Harley's had kind of an identity crisis, obviously, over the last decade. So like, I don't know. It's something that I think it would have been bad. Like, I don't think that's questionable. Like, I'm not sitting here saying this is like a lost masterpiece of a Batman film. Like, Forever is more solid than people give it credit for, and then, Robin is just kind of crazy. But like, this would have been something that, like Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, I probably would have like really loved as a child, then hated as a teenager, and then loved again as like an older teenager and into my 20s. So like, this is something that I don't think it's like a lost masterpiece at all, but I wish it existed. Not because I think it would have been great, but just because, fuck, man, like, you just listen to that and you're just like, I need this. I need to see what this was gonna fucking look like. And I think that's kind of one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of projects that you're just like, this probably would not have been good, but it would have been the weirdest shit in the world, and it would have been cool if it had come out. I mean, honestly.
I feel like, and this is going to sound weird, I feel like Batman Triumphant was a concept that was way ahead of its time, and if it's ever going to get made, it would get made now.
You think?
Because the whole premise of the movie was, you're going to explore Batman's demons and have Scarecrow and Harley Quinn show up, but fill the movie with cameos from Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito and Jack Nicholson and Jim Carrey and all of that from like the history of that particular Bat franchise. And just like a year out from Batman and Robin, there's no way the studio was going to dish out money to make that kind of movie. But now, with fucking Flashpoint casting 3 Batmen, there's no way. Like, I'm sure in the next 10 years, we're going to get an animated movie or something that's going to be the script for Batman Unchained brought to life again. Because the whole movie was nostalgia bait.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And I'd die for it. Because, like,
Same.
This is probably one of my Batman hot takes, but I'm fully ready to stand by it, is the Schumacher Batman movies are way more enjoyable to me to sit down and watch than any of the Burton films. And like I don't even legitimately think I'm defining like, oh, Batman and Robin is a bad movie. It's just fun to laugh at it that way. I legitimately think Batman and Robin is a fucking solid ass, like, the script for Batman and Robin is like, people ragged on that for so long because they thought it was meant to be serious. They just didn't get it. Like, it is a joke. Like, it is 100% a comedy, but it is the only Batman canon where you can have them fight on giant fucking typewriters, and Gotham City's got these crazy ass statues, and everything's fucking colored, and the Batman costumes are just ridiculous, and they've got nipples on the costume because Joel Schumacher's not a fucking coward, and he's just like, well, Batman can be sexy too. And like, we're looking right now, Matt Reeves has just clicked onto that as well. Yeah, Batman can be sexy, and people are losing their minds over it. So like, it was one of the fucking greatest things we could have had, where we got this just gay man's vision of, let me bring a comic book to life on screen, and people just couldn't fucking take that. But it's exactly why I adore it so much, because it's just unapologetic about. And yes, there are some fucking badass missteps in that. Everything to do with Batgirl and Batman and Robin is just get it out of the film. But everyone else, George Clooney is fucking Bruce Wayne, is legit kind of killing it. Fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze, has got more gas in his tank as a recurring Batman villain than fucking Heart of Ice Mr. Freeze, because you can tell more. Because you can tell more than one story with him, because he's doing like themed crimes and he's got the tragic backstory. It's like so good. Like, legitimately, there's like a fucking story underneath all that. Batman and Robin is a bit more of the middle take, where it doesn't go as fucking off the walls bizarre, just living in the moment. All the actors are on fucking cocaine, go crazy. But it's still got that fucking Batman ass heart to it. Obviously, Val Kilmer's just hard to get through as Bruce sometimes, but like the general premise of it and everything to do with that is just so much more appeals to me on a different kind of level than a lot of the Burton films. So everyone now and again keeps wanting to do a return to the Burton universe, right? And I'd be down for that, just so we could get Billy D. Williams Two-Face, because that is what we got fucking robbed of. But we keep going back to the Burton universe. Let's do a Burton comic. Let's get Michael Keaton back as Batman. I'm like, if they got George Clooney back as Batman instead, like, he's a legitimately better actor to bring back to play an older Bruce. It's just Dark Knight Returns Bruce right there. Like, I don't know, that part of that universe, in the same way that 66 kind of got like DC loosened up on it a little bit, assumedly now they seem to be shitting on it again. But where they kind of embraced it and they did those animated films, returning to the Schumacher movie era again would be so good for me. Because like, as a kid, like, this is nostalgia bait to me, Steve, so the film you're pitching is exactly what I would pitch. Because when I was a kid, my first exposure to Batman was Batman Forever on VHS and the Robin's Reckoning 2-parter on like a VHS tape that came in like a little box. For Batman the Animated Series. So I would just watch those three on loop, and it was the only thing I knew about Batman. So I always just do Batman with Robin, and this was just my era of Batman, is just kind of like heightened Gotham, this superhero Batman who was more a mental figure than a Punisher. So when I go back to the Burton films, which I watched after, it just felt just a lot like, this Batman don't know what the fuck he's doing. George Clooney Batman had his shit together. He's got lasers in his fucking utility belt. Like, I would be 100% down if we ever got to see the script realized in some way, shape, or form.
You guys ever stop and think about how Arkham Knight was just that script without any balls?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's probably why I give it more credit. I'm done.
Oh, fuck, that's hilarious.
It hits me in that kind of way.
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. That's this script with a 100% less fun Scarecrow, for sure. Oh, my God. No, I mean, it's... I mean, I hear you. I definitely do have a love for the Burton films and the aesthetic of the Burton films. It leans more into that gothic dark side of the Batman aesthetic that I'm always fucking into. So I don't have quite the same attachment, but I do still have a love for the Schumacher era films. And I do hope this comes back. This idea comes back in some way. I mean, yeah, with Keaton coming back in the Flash movie, which on its own, just the idea of Keaton playing an older Bruce, I mean, I'm pretty hyped for that. I think that sounds like a cool idea. Everything else around the Flash movie notwithstanding. But yeah, I mean, the Schumacher era, I think you're right in that there'd be a hesitancy to go back to it in the same way that we sort of see DC tiptoe around the 66 stuff. But I think even to this day, the Schumacher stuff is so reviled by the average Batman fan in a way that the West stuff wasn't, because everyone can look back at the Adam West stuff and just say, well, this was obviously trying to be a comedy, and in a way that for some reason we can't do with the Schumacher stuff. So I don't know. I don't know that Schumacher Batman nostalgia will ever really be a thing that's big enough for DC to try to cash in on it. Because I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is how big does the thing have to get until DC decides they want to use it to cash in on it. That's like the calculated risk they have to figure out.
I think if Schumacher dying didn't create some sort of resurgence in popularity for his stuff, probably nothing will at this point. But I'm still pretty much holding out hope for this kind of movie being made soon. Because there's no way you greenlight shit like Flashpoint without thinking in the back of your mind, this is the kind of script Jeff Johns would shit his pants over.
I mean, I think that's deliberately why we went through 7 of those until he found the one he could shit his pants over. Yeah, I can see that. All right then, Steve. What's your last one?
So this is tough because there's just so many ones. I thought about talking about the unproduced Nightwing TV show that would have been done by the guys who did Legend of Korra. That would have been so fucking cool. I thought about the animated movie based on Hush that would have been set in the Batman's universe back in the day. And I also thought about doing Gotham High, that animated show that would have been fucking
that would have been the fucking best shit. Good. I want it. Dude, you have no idea how much my wife and I fucking wish we had gotten that. Holy shit.
Oh no, I know. I would have died for that shit. It sounded so fucking cool.
It did. Oh my god, I would have fucking... Oh, I know.
I'm going to have to go with probably a more obvious pick, just because there's just so much more material available for this, and it's kind of surprising that it never went into production, given how much is there. But I really, really wanted to see Darren Aronofsky's Batman Year One on film.
Ooh.
I really want to know what that's like. You can find the script online. The way it reads and the history we have makes it seem very plausible that was the actual script, but I'm always hesitant with that kind of stuff. But basically what happened was, around 2000, they were trying to develop new Batman movies, and the idea was, well, let's do an origin story, and why would you do anything except Batman Year One, which is one of the best Batman comic books of all time, and they got Frank Miller to write a Batman comic, but around the same time, they had to figure out who was going to direct it, and so they had a laundry list of people, including Joel Schumacher, to come back and do it. But the idea was, we want to do like a really, really dark, sort of like a filmmaker's take on Batman kind of thing. So all of the big names of that era in filmmaking were attached to this, like David Fincher and stuff. And eventually they went on Darren Aronofsky to make it. And at this point in time, Darren Aronofsky hadn't made a whole bunch of stuff. He'd made Pi and he'd made Requiem for a Dream. And both of those are like really weird, trippy, psychological thrillers that made him like an art house fascination. Like Pi's an entirely black and white movie that came out in 1998, which is really interesting. And so the idea was, okay, let's get Darren Aronofsky to write a Batman Year One script, and let's get Frank Miller to write a Batman Year One script, and we'll mash them together creatively, and we'll make a Batman Year One movie. And so those two worked together. Miller wrote a script, Aronofsky wrote a script, then they co-wrote one, I think, which was a third one. And the idea was this really grounded take on Batman. Frank Miller has gone on record to say that his Batman, fucking Dark Knight Returns, all-star Batman, goddamn Batman dude, said that his version of Batman was too nice for Darren Aronofsky. Like, Aronofsky was going, like, so far in with the concept. Bruce's, like, sort of beeline plot in the movie was going to be figuring out how to get back his company because a fortune had been wrestled away from him. He was going to be broke for most of it. Alfred was going to be a mechanic who was black named Al, and Bruce used to work there. Bruce would have had, like, dentures because he's got his teeth knocked out from fighting so much. It was supposed to be like this really dark movie. It was ironically what we ended up doing with most of the Batman stuff we have lately. When you talk about Matt Reeves' The Batman movie and you talk about Joaquin Phoenix, both guys are like French Connection, Chinatown, Taxi Driver. Those are the movies that influence what they're trying to do with those characters. And Aronofsky was the original one who was like, yeah, we're making French Connection. We're making Taxi Driver. We're making this. That sequence in the first issue of Batman Year One where Bruce is walking through the block with all of the prostitutes and stuff and gets stabbed in the leg, that's the whole fucking movie. It sounded so cool and so out there and probably would have been kind of terrible if I'm being completely honest. But I really, really wanted to see it because I reread Batman Year One last night for the first time in like 5 years, and I am just amazed at how incredible that book is. Like, it's so fucking good. It's embarrassing how much better that book is than Dark Knight Returns, yet Dark Knight Returns is the one everyone talks about. As far as good Frank Miller Batman.
Big
Like,
agree.
it's such a fucking good book. I love Batman Year One.
I'm not gonna get
Big
into
agree,
it.
Steve. I agree with you.
You're both wrong, but
Dark Knight Returns is like someone's like high school slam poem compared to the auteur work that is Batman Year One.
Batman Year One
Love
is like
Batman
someone wrote a really good one-issue Batman origin and then wrote 3 more issues after it.
No, dude, 4 issues of like the most concise, artfully done Batman origin of all time. But anyway,
Let's go, Steve,
I love that
right now.
I love that book. And I would have loved to see that way that book was designed on screen, because Frank Miller is a guy that like very vehemently understands that comic books are not film, and he understands that comic books have sort of an inferiority complex and trying to pretend to be like film all the time. And so he makes his comic books very deliberately in a way that sort of captures the elements of film that are hard to get down on the panel. And sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. But Batman Year One is one of those cases where it works really well because he's got Mazzucchelli doing most of the heavy lifting with the art. And so there's little details here where, like, the first time you meet Commissioner Loeb and his office is filled with pop culture stuff and Peanuts statues. And then, like, in issue 3, his collection is stolen by Catwoman. And if you didn't, like, stare at his desk, you would have missed that detail. And there's just so much in the way that book's laid out that you could make a down-to-earth street movie and just use the panels as storyboards. It would have worked so well. As far as I can tell, because I've only scanned the script, I haven't sat down and read it, Gordon wasn't in it, and it would have just like been entirely from Bruce's perspective, and it would have had a lot more of the dialogue that you got between Bruce and Gordon in the comic would have been Bruce and Alfred in the movie, which I would have been fine with. That seems like a completely normal thing to do in this sort of situation. They did talk to Christian Bale about casting him really, really early on at that point, but it didn't work out. And I think the reason they canceled it entirely is because they wanted to make a Batman versus Superman movie, which they then canceled to make Batman Begins. So there's a long road of complication there. I think there was a Batman Beyond movie in the works at this point too. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of reasons why this particular project didn't pan out. But the big reason, as far as I can tell, is the studio thought it was way too dark. And Aronofsky and Frank Miller have both gone on record to say that they were asked to do a certain kind of movie, and they turned in a script that was exactly what they were asked to make, and the studio got cold feet in like the last day. So like it wasn't that it was so dark that WB had no idea where they were going with it. It's that they knew exactly who they got into bed with and then pulled the rug out from under them at the last minute, which is a real shame. Because of all the unproduced Batman movies, this would have been like the angstiest one of all time, and it would have come out at the height of Batman being a paranoid, schizophrenic, angsty dude.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about that specifically, which I want to get your thoughts on, is you say that pitch, right? and you imagine what that would look like. But then, if you look at the concept art for the suit is just the year one suit straight. And I'm like, would they have just... I would have died if they just did this. It's like, alright, this is just Batman, and we're going as real as possible. So he's literally just in the comic book year one suit, because that is literally just spandex and fabric. And you can buy that, like how Mazzucchelli draws that, you can buy that's just what Bruce wears. It's just that very simple outfit. Would they have played it straight like that, or would they have gone with the tactical armor vibe? Because the concept art for it is just the year one art.
I really, really think they would have just gone straight with that. As far as I can tell, the sort of like weirder, overly dark stuff that is in the script would not have been things that they ultimately decided to film. Like, I don't see any way of them being allowed to hire an actor like Christian Bale to make this movie and then being like, okay, so you're going to wear dentures for half of it because you've lost all your teeth. Like, there's just no way.
But he'd do it.
A lot of like
he'd knock his
overly
teeth
dark...
out to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the overly dark stuff that would have led to hyper armored Nolanized Dark Knight or Arkham Knight Batman would not have happened. I think that the way it was working, it would have been like straight off the page. And again, you look at the year one comic and you play that as storyboard, and you can make that suit work perfectly. And part of what I love about that concept art is that it's not just the year one suit straight. It's the year one suit meets the old school purple glove suit with the wide ears.
That's true.
It's just such a perfect marriage of early years Batman. And seeing that on screen would have been the coolest thing of all time. The concept art, I hate concept art. I feel like every fucking time we get concept art for a movie that comes out, it's like the premise for the concept art was, okay, make it the least likely thing we could ever do, and then we slowly get to something that resembles the comic book character. But the concept art for this movie was perfect. Like, if they just improved from there, I can't even imagine how good the suit would have looked.
Mm-hmm.
It's got your thing that we want, Matt, where it's cape over the shoulders. Cape over the shoulders.
I need it. If Batman doesn't have a cape over the shoulders that can fully envelop him, then what's the fucking point?
Yep, when that caped over the shoulders, there's one version of the costume where he's got like sort of like a button up that bleeds down and then has black pants going down straight. It looks so fucking classy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, I think, right now. Yeah, it looks pretty hype. Oh, that's cool. Like, the Battinson suit looks way better in motion than it does in stills. I hate that we've regressed, because like I actually don't really love the Batfleck suit, because it's comic accurate, but it does all the things I don't like. It gives him the really short ears, it makes him super giant bulky, and it makes the symbol look really bizarre. So, like, it's a step in the right direction. It's just personally not to my aesthetic, but at least we were getting there. And then we're taking a step back to do, like, the super armored suit, which it's probably my favorite armored suit I've ever seen, the Battinson suit is. But it sucks that after all these years, we still haven't gotten something that looks like the year one suit. Just a classic Batman fucking suit. Like, we just have yet to get that on screen, and that kind of sucks.
And that's something where...
So easy.
Yeah, it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
That fucking Predator Batman fan film did it, and it looked great.
Yeah, because it's something where I think when people who say that I know they're not cosplayers, because I've done this, so I could speak from experience. Whenever people say Batman more realistically needs to wear armor, are talking out their fucking ass because they've never worn armor. Batman would not be able to do anything he could do if he had a single bit of thing that could clank, 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 or like fucking restricted his elbow movement, or could get broken off and ruin his image of looking like a creature of the night because he looks like he's wearing fucking body armor. Like, everything about Batman in armor just goes against the thing. If you've just got a dude in cloth and leather and he's fucking kicking ass and just blending into darkness and he's silent because he's got free range of motion, like, there's a reason why Bruce Lee didn't wear fucking armor. He didn't need it. It's the same with Batman. It's the reason we have the biggest action movie in the planet, John Wick. He's got, a lined suit. You can do that with Batman. And you just have him wear lined thing under the fabric if you really need it. But he doesn't need things restricting his movement. The most realistic version of Batman would be a guy in just compression gear with a cape and like a cowl, and he'd fucking kick ass with it, because that's all he'd need. So yeah, I would have loved to see this film as well, Steve. I think this is one that I actually do think is probably lost to time, but we might have to do a Geeky Gentleman like the script or something one day. That could be fun.
Yeah, I would love to sit down and just sort of dissect the script. I don't think this is ever getting made. Triumphant's one of those things where I could very much see a revival of that being made on some way, shape, or form, especially now that DC is okay with doing a multiverse on screen. Kotor 3, I could totally see happening. Kingdom of the Mad, I could totally see happening. Silent Hills, probably not, but we'll get some Silent Hill eventually. This is the one thing that we've talked about tonight where I'm like, I don't think this is ever happening, and I don't think this is a script that's ever being touched again, except to talk about a script that never got made. I would love a straight up Batman movie that is year one, just like page for page, but that's also not what this movie quite would have been either, and there's just so much potential in the wiggle room it was trying to carve out, where it wanted to be comic booky like the Nolan movies, but it wanted to have that really, really gruff tone of reality of like, he's Batman, he's got the trunks on the outside, but he's drenched in blood and covered in dirt. Like, it's just, there's something so perfect about that sort of image that I wish we really got. But sadly, no. Darren Aronofsky is not the name he once was when he was out for this movie. And if we were going to do a Batman movie like this, I think the closest we're going to get at this point is The Batman, the way that looks. Because we're never going to do a straight up year one adaptation. We're closer to getting a Dark Knight Returns one than year one at this point.
Yeah.
All right then. Finally, my last one is something that we've been talking about, things that have been redone in different ways, and this is something that has factually, the creators who didn't get to do this all went off and took their ideas from this and made it into different works. But so there's some silver lining, is ending this on a positive note, that we still did get good things. But as a fan of this character, the fact that this didn't happen explains everything about their modern state and the issues with the character right now and why we're still trapped in nostalgia. And that is Superman 2000 / Superman Now. Now, for those who don't know, this was a pitch in the late 90s by Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Mark Miller, and Tom Pryor. Though Tom Pryor has said that he wasn't involved in the pitching process. He was just part of that group, and it never got through to the stage where he would have got more involved. And basically, Grant Morrison was writing Justice League, and him and Mark Waid were talking about the Superman books and how they were finding that they weren't really living up to the peak of the character. They weren't doing anything interesting, which is soap opera bullshit. As the Triangle era, he had a experience with Mark Waid where they were going down a Comic-Con and they saw a pitch-perfect Superman cosplayer, and Grant Morrison sat with him and treated it in his Grant Morrison way. We had shamanic experience, and he get to spoke with Superman and talk to him and learn from him. So he talked to the Superman cosplayer, who responded in character and answered all his questions. Now, the cover for All-Star Superman is based on that cosplayer in the position he was sitting in. And it kind of gave Morrison a revelatory experience with the character of, like, he always seen Superman pose, muscles rippling, eyes glaring, heat vision. But this cosplayer was just the most relaxed person he ever seen in the world. And he was like, oh, wait, fuck. Superman, if you're invincible, if you're the strongest person in the world, you'd be so chill, because nothing could hurt you. You'd just be so open and relaxed and friendly. So him and Mark Waid just had this burst of ideas where they went back home, and Mark Miller, before he fucked over him, was Grant Morrison's kind of pupil at this point in time. So they were just going all of these ideas on how they were going to revamp the Superman books. They were going to basically do everything you see in Superman Red Son, Superman Birthright, Superman All-Star, and put it into mainline Superman and write all of his books, the 4 books at the time that were coming out, co-write them all in the same way that 52 got co-written, where it was like every issue was done by all of them and then they released them and so on and so forth. And it was going to be this big, every villain was getting reinvented, Superman was getting smarter, his costume was getting redesigned it was going to be a more simplified S, the trunks were gone, he just got a yellow bow. It looked a lot like the Rebirth suit that we had before we came back to this. And just, you can read the whole pitch document online. Unfortunately, apparently the one that's online is the one that is mostly Mark Waid and Mark Miller. Whereas the Morrison version, which was the more finalized version, we've never got to see that one, which I'm presuming, like all Grant Morrison fucking tomes, will never see the light of day and will hurt my soul. But yeah, everything about this was going to be perfect. The reason it got cancelled annoys me so fucking much, because they got brought on by Eddie Berganza, who was the Superman editor at the time. And he agreed, yeah, let's revamp the Superman book. All 4 of you guys can come on, you'll each get a Superman book each, and you'll all co-write it. However, executive editor Mike Carlin was on holiday at the time. And when he came back, Berganza hadn't told him that he was giving the Superman books away to all these big-name creatives. Because in the 90s, if you didn't know how stupid DC was, they had a rule that big-name creatives couldn't be on Batman or Superman because they assumed those books could sell on themselves. So you were actually forbidden if you were a big enough name to write those characters. Fucking, yeah. So when we found out that apparently Berganza kind of sold the story, these guys came up and to save his own skin, these guys came up in and tried to steal the books away from other people, like Dan Jurgens and such. They were like, alright, fine. None of you people are writing a Superman book ever again because you've disrespected the company or some bullshit like that. And that's why all those guys then left DC for that big period. They all left DC. Grant Morrison went over to Marvel and did X-Men. Mark Waid went over his plays. Mark Miller went over to Marvel as well. They all kind of did the things. Eventually, like I said, silver lining, you get to see bits and pieces of what this would have looked like in basically every major Superman book that came out since that they got to do. But yeah, it's if this had happened at that point, Superman standing as a character would be changed forever. Like legitimately, this could have been a Dark Knight Returns level shift where that put Batman over back onto the top spot, and now Batman was the premier character. If when in the late 90s, where this was, all these names were as hot as they've ever been, if they did this and it did well, we'd be in a different landscape right now for the character. And we may not have had perfect works like All-Star, but it's hard for me to say we'd be in a, like, it's, do I want the one perfect work, or do I want the character as a whole to have more consistency and legions of good books following this, and then if this was carried on. So that's always hurt me, and it's a very tragic story.
I loved the way they pitched what made their Superman and Clark Kent different, because part of the impetus for this whole movement was that they thought for too long Clark and Superman became sort of indistinguishable characters from each other, and so it didn't really matter that Clark Kent was one thing or Superman was another. And so their idea was something along the lines of like, Clark Kent is not who Superman really is, but Clark Kent is what Superman used to be. And that the Clark that they were pitching was this person that sees the entire world through the wide spectrum of Superman's powers, and because of that, in his day-to-day life, he feels like an alien and can't connect with people, and then he puts on the face of Superman and becomes the ultimate connection to what being human means, as powerful, as overcoming, as connected, as saving, as always being reachable and bright and spotlight. That being Superman makes him more human than being Clark Kent, because in his day-to-day life, he's surrounded by nothing but like these weird alienating moments of his power experience, changing how he experiences his people. And that would have been so fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. Like the description they had of just a very simple thing that once you read this, you're like, oh fuck, yeah, you get it, is How does Clark Kent feel when he can see the DNA strands of his parents and the millions of dead skin cells coming off them at every single second? And he can see that. He can breathe that. A burst of wind flies past his face, and he can tell you exactly the molecules in the air, what have been picked up, and what of someone who breathed past that, what they ate for dinner. Like, that kind of really living in that. He's not just an alien. It's not making him more disconnected. It's when he has this power as Superman and he can do this, it's like how you've said, I think in the previous episode, Steve, where we're imagining the most pinnacle idea of what humanity could be, and we're making that a character. And then what does that character have to deal with? What are their troubles? What are the villains you create for a character who sees the world in that way? How do you tell ongoing stories like that? Like, they fucking cracked the code. Like, it's why I get annoyed every like couple months. Just when you'll see a check mark on Twitter say Batman needs to help the wealthy, like Batman needs to fucking help Gotham with his wealth, you'll see a news article about how Superman doesn't work in this medium, this medium, this medium, this medium. And every time, I'm just like, there's a fucking pitch document online where they fucking bit by bit dissected how you do it. And it's the best thing they ever did. And proof of concept, All-Star Superman came out, and it's the best fucking thing ever made. Like, it's so baffling to me that so many creatives are still struggling to figure it out, but it was figured out, and the blueprint is there. But because it never got that push, and because it is kind of obscure, where you have to be kind of a fan around internet circles to know about it, it's kind of lost to time. Even though these creatives have done big works that have influenced things, it's not the same. Like, it's not the same as if they had actually changed the core Superman books.
Yeah, I mean, that's because you get that with like a lot of characters. Like, you'll get that take on the character that kind of gets it, that like perfectly, and then it's just a struggle to sort of recapture that and make it something that works. And it's especially frustrating with Superman because Superman has this like huge fan base that ranges from people like you to people like, I don't know, Angry Joe. Like, people who seem to like Superman as an aesthetic and as a big punch man who has big epic fights with Darkseid. Like, people who are real hyped for the Snyder Cut. Like, and it's frustrating because those people seem to gravitate towards the elements of Superman that are like the least interesting, but those are the ones that like corporate higher ups seem to think are the easiest to sell to people. And so it's definitely frustrating because I'm not like as well read on Superman, but even I feel like I at least get the point of Superman a little bit more than a lot of like what he gets portrayed as in media. And so it's really frustrating to have a cabal of really fucking great creators who had this perfect idea and then that's it. I mean, at least there has been good Superman stuff since then. It's just it's few and far between, and if this had released, I think you're right, it could have been like the blueprint for how to make Superman interesting.
It would have been in the same way that I'm glad Steve preceded this with Year One, and how that kind of just defined, even more than Dark Knight Returns or Denny O'Neil's Batman, Year One defined just how people tell Batman stories now. I feel like this would have been that for Superman, is because what Superman got for that was John Byrne, and that's what we've been saddled with. If it was this instead, I think we would be in a much better spot.
I'm always going to be brokenhearted about the fact that we didn't get this, because there's just so much to that pitch. There's so much detail. Every character's got a breakdown. The whole idea was like peak Grant Morrison, which is, let's bring Superman back to his weird, kooky, Silver Age vibes. He was going to be way more powerful than he ever was before. He was going to have he was going to be a super genius. He was going to have like all of like the insane feats he could do in All-Star Superman, except he's just going to be main continuity, and things were going to be weird and trippy, and it was going to be this like deeply existential exploration of like what does it mean to be Superman as the ultimate human being, and how does it feel to be Clark Kent pretending to be something you're not all the time? And it would have been so fucking good. But no, we got the entirety of the Superman comics in the 2000s with Jeff Loeb and Joe Kelly, and then everything after that, which is just kind of been.
Yeah.
Mm.
So like, there's a bit of a downer there, but again, if you want to see, this is probably one of the only ones where I can point to where you can kind of see what this would have been, is read All Star, read Red Sun, read Grant Morrison's Action Comics, read Superman Birthright. If you cobble all of those together, you can start seeing the connective ideas that, oh, all of these Supermen are vegetarian. Oh, all of these are the same Lex Luthor. Oh, all of these Supermen are really powerful and doing crazy shit. Like, even though some are better than others, like, it's clear Mark Miller is the weak link of this trilogy, but you can see the shared idea for what this character could have been there. So for recommendations for this, I guess I'll end it with, you can go check out those stories, and maybe someday some filmmaker or some other comic book writer will get to do this. Or again, I'm making audio dramas now. I'm probably gonna do it eventually. So keep an eye out for that. Once I've got my Batman kick, the Superman will be next. Okay, this has been a fun one, man. I can tell we all got really into this because this one went along. So I'm just gonna rush to what we're gonna do next week. Which I think
did I even get to do my third one?
Did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. You did. Did you?
No, I didn't.
What was your third one?
I did Silent Hills and I did Batman Triumphant.
Yeah, what was your third one?
The Darth Maul game. Why has there not been a Darth Maul game, but there's been 2 fucking stupid-ass Force Unleashed games?
How the fuck has there not been a Darth Maul game? You're right.
There was, like, Red Fly Games. They had a prototype. There's footage of it. It had the shittest development possible because Lucasfilm and fucking George Lucas himself kept showing up and being like, do this. Make these 2 characters. It was going to be called, like, these 2 characters are friends. George, those 2 characters existed thousands of years apart. They're friends. It was going to be called, like, fucking Battle of the Sith Lords. There's going to be, like, Darth Maul and Darth Talon. It was going to be very bizarre. Red Fly is not a studio that has a ton of, like, good stuff under their belts. It's not, like, ports and shit, but, like, the footage looks aight. But I'm just like, look, I like Force Unleashed fine. I didn't need a sequel to that, and I would have taken a Darth Maul game over both of them.
Wait. So was this the Night Sisters Dathomir Darth Maul, or was this pre-Clone Wars Zabrak Darth Maul?
It was. I don't know. I think it was.
He had the robot legs.
Yeah, but I mean, he had the robot legs and the.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Clone Wars had happened by now.
I think Clone Wars was still going on when this was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was. Yeah, I don't know if this was. He's a Zabrak or if this was the Night Sisters. I mean, either way, just Darth Maul is like one of their most popular characters. They fucking sold entire arcs of Clone Wars on the back of this guy. The fact that there hasn't been an attempt to revive or do it, and the guys at Red Fly Studio, the guys and gals, they said they were taking some inspiration from the Arkham games. They were gonna have him be kind of they were gonna have these, like, he's fighting dudes, but there's also like a predator, like, striking from the shadows element to it. And I'm like, that's kind of weird, but sure, cool, why not?
I guess he's a Sith. It sort of makes sense.
Yeah. There's actually there's a book, there's like a Legends book called Darth Maul Shadowhunter that I used to really like as a kid. It was like one of the first Legends books I ever read, where it's just like Darth Maul going after this guy and trying to assassinate him before episode 1. And the guy, like, the book culminates in the guy, like, getting to Coruscant, trying to, like, deliver this information to, like, a politician. And he, like, rides up this elevator, he goes through the doors, and he, like, collapses at the feet of the politician. And he's like, oh God, oh God, I'm safe. Oh, thank God. And he looks up and it's Palpatine. And Palpatine's just like, of course you're safe. And it's fucking great. And like just something like that, like a fucking prequel to episode 1 where you're Darth Maul like hunting down targets or shit, like fucking anything. Like Darth Maul is one of your bread and butter Star Wars characters. I don't see how you let this not happen. That's all I got.
Yeah, this project does not stay dead. There's no way that we don't get a Darth Maul video game, especially now. Maybe it'll take a couple of years because of the whole Ray Park situation at this point. But there's no way, because I mean there are other people that have played Darth Maul, so we're fine. There's no way that we don't get this video game. If anything, the only reason that this does not end up happening at some point is because we can't wrestle Star Wars away from the shittiness that EA has been putting out for the last few years. But I'm sure that'll happen eventually.
Yeah, EA has mishandled the Star Wars license badly.
It's kind of shocking how badly they've mishandled it. Like,
I mean, it is. I mean, you had nothing, and then you had Battlefront, which fucking might as well not have existed.
That's a beta for $60.
Yeah, it is. It's Battlefront 1 is some of the most garbage. Like the entire release of Star Wars Battlefront EA 1 and just everything about how that was handled is fucking obscene. Yeah. Like Battlefront 2 is legit. Like, all right, cool. So like Battlefront 2, we have a campaign. It's not like an amazing campaign, but it's something. It's there. And to this day I still enjoy the Battlefront 2 multiplayer. But then like Jedi Fallen Order was like the first honest to God attempt at like adding to the pantheon of like really good Star Wars games, and like it's fine. And now we're like kind of dialing it back to Star Wars Squadrons, which has given me real kind of scary live service models, the same way the Avenger like live service vibes, the same way the Avengers game is. So I'm just kind of like, so just with EA's unwillingness to do like just a single player action Star Wars game without fucking pulling teeth, because we finally got Jedi Fallen Order, I just I don't know, but like a Darth Maul game that's in the vein of Jedi Fallen Order, that's kind of like a Souls-like that could be cool. Like I'd be down for that. I don't want every Star Wars game to be a Souls-like, because I know they're getting a sequel to Fallen Order. And really pitch. Oh, go ahead.
So sorry, I was just going to say, while you were on the Souls thing, because I have really, really mixed feelings on Fallen Order, but if you wanted to do Dark Souls Star Wars, Darth Maul is kind of the perfect character for it, because you could literally just make a Dark Souls game. You could do magic, you could do weird fire, you could do armor, just lead into the entirety of the Night Sister stuff with a lightsaber.
Yeah, you definitely could. I agree for sure. I think it's shocking how much Dark Souls has caught on in the gaming world, and so the fact that we ended up getting a Star Wars Souls-like is like fucking, it's still fucking crazy to me that happened. And like a Darth Maul game, I also really like the idea, because like there's also 1313, which looked cool. There was Visceral's open world Star Wars game, which looked cool. Like an open world Darth Maul game that takes place on like fucking Nar Shaddaa or some shit, where you're going around and hunting people down, or like even like an open world bounty hunter game where you're doing that kind of shit. Like anything would be fucking cool, but it's just like creative ideas are not EA's strong suit with this license right now, because even doing a Souls-like for Star Wars is cool, but it's weirdly safe because of how big Dark Souls is. So like, I don't know, I feel like if you leaned into that and got a really good team, you could do a fucking phenomenal Souls-like with Darth Maul. But at this point, I just like, you've got Lego Skywalker Saga coming out, but and you've got Squadrons, but that's like it. And I don't know. So I just don't know how they didn't let this happen, but surely it's gonna happen at some point. Just it's probably gonna look entirely different, because the footage that we have of it is like Darth Maul fighting Mandalorians, like, and they're clearly Clone Wars Mandalorians. It's just kind of a few snippets, but I mean, it doesn't look bad. The gameplay looks solid enough. So here's hoping we'd get a Darth Maul game eventually, which I'm sure we will. I don't know how they could not.
My biggest worry about something like that is, how do you make a game where playing as Darth Maul has its distinctive quality that isn't just playing as any other Jedi in any other video game ever?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't think Star Wars games have ever really like addressed that problem. Where even in Fallen Order, like it doesn't really matter who you are. The lightsaber doesn't work like a lightsaber. There's no system for like styles of combat. Not that there needs to be necessarily, but I don't know. I'm looking at the test footage now and like it looks cool, but it also just makes me think, Darth Maul skin. Like I just really want to know like how do you make a Star Wars video game where the character you play as has an impact on the gameplay.
I think the idea of making it kind of inspired by Arkham and having an element of like not stealth, because like Darth Maul's not someone who needs to hide from things, but you got to factor in if you're making a prequel, here's a character who cannot let people know that he exists, right? If you're making a prequel to Episode 1. So if you do a Darth Maul game that leans into the stealth as a predator type angle that like Arkham Asylum did, and like when they soft rebooted Splinter Cell with Conviction, where instead of this slow plodding hide or you're going to get killed stealth, it's move quickly, stealth, strike, move quickly. I think if you did that with Darth Maul, that would be really cool, especially if you do a prequel where it's like an assassination type thing. I think you lean into that. Yeah, like a Hitman game with like the ferocity and the speed and the action like dialed up to 11, give you these like big open world environments, kind of a la Hitman or Dishonored or Deus Ex, like just big open world levels where it's not like a big open world game. You just go from level to level, and each level is like large and massive, and there's like a bunch of different ways to accomplish your goals, and just let you be Darth Maul and play around in that. I don't know. I think there's a lot of mileage there. Like that. My biggest thing with EA though is that if we do get a Darth Maul game, I think it is going to be a really safe hack and slash or Souls-like. Like I don't think EA is in a place right now where they're going to put that extra creative mile in to do something like really in-depth and cool, because EA knows that they can just put out whatever and it'll print money. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little depressing.
We'll see though. We'll see. I like the ideas you've all both presented there. I think honestly, the easiest character, if you'd want to make like a game where like the gameplay does feel different, you have to manage different things, is if we don't get a Darth Maul game, we're definitely going to get a Darth Vader game. And I think Vader plays very differently to how you normally play as like a Jedi and Sith in these games, where you're like you're super agile and you're super fast and all of that. But Maul particularly, I think, leaning into the stealth, leaning into mission-based things, leaning into you're not necessarily here to devil may cry your way through and kill everyone. You can, but the objective is to stay hidden and prove yourself to Sidious. And like, if you make it like a rank-based system, have it be where like you'll get the main mission is to kill someone, but like a Hitman, Sidious will really reward you if you fucking convince others to kill the target and use your force powers to like make like servants or dialogue options where you convince other people and then you betray them and like shit like that, where you deal into, okay, how does a Sith differ from a Jedi? Is a Sith doesn't build allies, a Sith builds servants and followers. And how do you manage that? How do you play that? How do you deal with the morality of that? Because with Darth Maul in his early years, you can kind of deal with before he got so fucked up, because Darth Maul's got a bit more of a heart to him than like Sidious does. Like he's still an asshole, but like he'll cry over his brother's death, like he'll regret things, he gets more emotional about Kenobi, like
he'll also just go fucking crazy.
Exactly, right? So like I think there's definitely room to play with that character there, Matt. I'm glad, thank you both for reminding me not to skip over your last topic, because that's a really strong one. Yeah, Darth Maul game, make it happen, please.
When you said Vader, I could have sworn you were going to say Grievous, because Grievous as a video game protagonist would be cool as shit.
Just make a whole Sith game where you go through the eras of Sith and you play a different Sith each couple levels, then you can do everyone.
Like fucking Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, but
but with Sith. And it's like, call it Apprentices of Sidious, Apprentices of the Sith. So you get fucking
Dooku,
Maul, Dooku, Grievous, and then last one is Vader and Empire Time. That'd be so good.
Oh, that'd be the shit. Okay.
See, EA, it's not that hard.
Really isn't.
We're fucking saying these ideas for free. Okay. Thank you both. This has been a long one, but this has been a really fun one. So everyone listen in. You got a meaty Geek for Gentlemen going right down your ear holes. Hope you enjoy it. Thick, long, and powerful. But we've got a review topic for next week, and this is going to be a unique one. And I'm very curious as how this is going to go. But Matt, you've said you've had experience with this, right? So if you can, try and get a little bit more experience with it before next week, because I want to do a review of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game.
Yes!
Oh, shit.
Yes!
Oh, shit.
So much fun!
Oh, I'm gonna have to call Spencer over and be like, hey, okay, explain this to me like I'm 7. Great.
Yes!
Because this will be
I'm so
perfect as
hyped.
well, because you can be the one who's not fucking doused in nostalgia about it. So I'm actually glad you're here for that, Matt, because I want to know, because it's so hard for me to get back into that mindset of learning to play. I think having a person who's really just, okay, I've played a couple, I tried to get taught it, and the complexity of it, I think that's good. Yeah, I'm all fucking in. So look out for that. Next time, we're going to do the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. Not the anime, not the thing, just how it plays as a game, reviewing it as the game of trading cards. Alright, this has been extremely fun. I have been a geek for fun.
I'm the Mac Kid.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
And we will be finding the time to do.
Yes.
I did watch the anime though. So I mean,